All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's tournament strategy show where we pretty much just pregame, talk through injury news, talk through some of the guys we like, potential leverage plays, and then, of course, later today, 5:30 p.m., we focus on what we're actually doing, the execution. We'll talk through men's, maxes, that kind of thing. But guys, last night was wild. Last night was a little crazy, not a good DFS night. Let's go ahead and look at the winning tournament lineup. Uh, Quite very few surprises here. Jordan Poole, I put a 10% minimum on him. I thought we were going to be under the field on Jordan Poole, but we were pretty close to field weight. He went off even with Kuzma returning, so that went pretty well. Brandon Miller was a core play last night. He was not great. I don't really know how he made the Nuts lineup last night, but I am, I guess, thankful for his performance. But he didn't play as many minutes as we expected he would. And then he also was just pretty passive. You could tell both of these teams are tanking pretty hard. Davis Bertans, he was someone that we had plenty of exposure to, so that wasn't really much of an issue. Jabari Walker, we had some exposure to. Because of some of the other value, I did deprioritize Jabari Walker, so I wasn't close to field weight, I don't think, but I know we had some exposure. DeAndre Ayton, we forced exposure to, so we were close to field weight exposure. I don't remember if he was a leverage play or not. We played bigs against the Hornets, though, so that wasn't a surprise. CJ McCollum did not look his way, did not even consider taking a shot on one of the Pelicans players going up against the Magic. I know Zion got hurt for a little bit, but he did return. And so that could have had something to do with it. But I think CJ was really just on fire last night. So congrats to him. He was extremely low owned. Yeah. And then Jalen Johnson made the lineup as well. Was not on Jalen. Murray took on more of a passive role last night and just let Jalen Johnson and Hunter do all of the work offensively last night. Jalen Smith wasn't a surprise once we saw he was starting. I forced exposure to Isaiah Jackson on the pre-lock show, but then once we got the Smith news, I just took that min from Jackson and put it on Smith. Whoever started was the guy there, and we knew that. So, again, a slate where we had some late Cade Cunningham news that hurt me a good bit. There were just a few plays that just didn't go the way we wanted them to, but that happens in NBA DFS, especially as we get towards the end of the season. We'll have some bad breaks. Ideally, we'll also have some breaks go our way too before the playoffs. I have some narratives I have going through my head that we'll talk through as we talk through some of these games, but I think when we get to the playoffs, some things might get interesting. What's up, Win the Millie? Hope you're doing all right. Yeah, McCollum and Johnson were also my downfall. Yep. Yeah, Walker crushed with the rebounds. 3 Pelicans got ejected in the last 7 seconds. Last night, NBA, NHL, everyone was just losing their damn mind last night. Tattoo, just give me the locks. I wish I had locks, man. You know, that's not me. Tattoo, that's an inside joke between us. He's an NHL coach here at DFS Army. You all should check him out. Check out the cheat sheets if you haven't already. They're fire. But let's go ahead and jump right into these games. Starting off, we have the Hawks going up against the Mavericks. Injury news here isn't that big of a deal. We have the usual guys out for the Hawks. And then for the Mavericks, they're also looking pretty healthy at this point, too. So we have a situation where we have the highest or second highest game total. The total just went down by half a point. We have the second highest game total on the slate. Very widespread. I do think the Hawks are probably going to get embarrassed here against the Mavericks, and so this is usually a game I want to force exposure to, but the Mavericks play at a pretty slow pace. I think everyone's priced appropriately here. The Hawks are also on the back end of a back-to-back. With those things all in consideration, the Hawks just aren't a priority for me. DeJounte Murray, he took last night off from an offensive perspective, so I'm hoping he can get his act together and do well tonight against the Mavericks. But at 9,800, he's someone that's not showing up much for me. I'm 20 maxing tonight, by the way. He's showing up in only one line out of those 20. Depending on if we get more value on this slate, which so far is not looking like we will, if we get more value, I will try to increase my exposure to DeJounte Murray. We don't have ownership yet, but I'll probably try to get around 15% or so. But as of right now, with the news we have currently, not expecting us to get a lot of value, Murray's one of my lowest priority pay up options. I have a like on him because I still would like to see him show up, but just not a focal point for me. You can chase Johnson. He's projecting decently well, but just like Murray, I only have him in about 1% of my lines right now. I'm not gonna try and chase it. It's possible he goes on a hot run here, but back into a back-to-back, not overly excited about it. Yeah, no one's standing out for me too much from this game right now. For the Mavericks, we know what to do here. You play Luka. The matchup against the Hawks is extremely soft. The thing that concerns me is the fact that this game could blow out. So Luka might not see his typical run there, but I don't play for blowouts. And so Luka, I'm just going to play. I'm not even going to overthink it. Kyrie Irving's getting interesting. Whenever he's below 9K, it makes me want to take a shot on him. Ultimately, I'm hoping his price tag goes down a bit more. Again, we'll see what happens with ownership exposures. If he's extremely low owned, I'll consider taking a shot on Kyrie, but at this point, it doesn't feel like as much of a necessity. And then Daniel Gafford, of course, I'm going to take a shot on here. We've hit on Gafford a couple of times over the last week or so, but I like playing bigs against Atlanta. They're giving up the 4th most fantasy points against bigs, and I'm thinking it's been a little bit more than a week or so. We hit on Gafford when they were playing Utah because we can play everyone against Utah. This is a similar spot. We can attack the Hawks with bigs. Going to continue to do that, especially with them being on the back end of a back-to-back. Should be a little bit of a softer matchup for them. I think Gafford can get there. So it's really Luka and Gafford for me, but if we get really desperate for value, maybe you can take some shots on Tim Hardaway Jr. I wouldn't be mad if he showed up, but I'm only going to force Gafford and Doncic. Let's see. Yeah, refs are insane. NHL is my worst DFS sport, but sports betting has been great, partially because of Tattoo and also just Sharp App has been crushing it. Capella's not bad. You can play bigs against the Mavericks. For me, it's really just the back end of a back-to-back that has me a little concerned. But Bruno, Capella, they're always okay if they're in the mix. Yeah, I don't disagree, man. Yeah, I feel like you just have to play Luka every time. Oh, Kyrie is always interesting. Is he always interesting, Tattoo? For me, it's only when he's below 9K or when Doncic is out. I usually try to avoid Kyrie. I think it stays competitive tonight. Both teams fighting for playoff spots. Washington, brother. Yeah, I said it. Yeah. Simato also likes PJ Washington a little bit when the Millie, so I don't think you're wrong. But, I just didn't get there yet. So there's some potential interesting spots. So Simato liked Tim Hardaway Jr., Simato liked PJ Washington a little bit. I need to dig a little bit deeper into those spots before I get overly excited about it. For the Mavericks, I just hate playing anyone not Luka because he does everything. And everyone else typically, they don't really just sit there and watch. But from a DFS standpoint, they sit there and watch. Oh, not DFS wise, his personal life. Oh, yeah, he is always interesting. You're not wrong about that. I called Washington out last time and he smashed. Nice, man. I missed that. Sorry I didn't call you out for it. That's an awesome call. Let's see. Next up, we have the Kings going up against the Knicks. For the Kings tonight, unfortunate for them, both of these teams have just had some brutal injuries that have really hurt them. Kevin Huerter is going to be out for the season with that torn labrum, and then Malik Monk is still out. For the Knicks, Josh Hart is questionable. Mitchell Robinson is questionable. And then we found out today that Julius Randle is going to get surgery on that shoulder injury he's been out with for a while, and he's going to miss the entire rest of the season. Really big blow to the Knicks' playoffs hopes. Will that impact their morale today? I don't know. That's a narrative for someone else to figure out. I did put a bet on the Kings 3.5, but I still think this is an okay matchup. No one stood out for me too much in my initial research. Simato didn't like anyone. Matchup against the Knicks is not a situation I try to force exposure to. Ownership is going to dictate a lot of what I do here. Again, we still do have Monk and Herter out, and so we've seen Fox just be a much better player as of late, but the risk is mitigated and his performance is mitigated because of the tough matchup against the Knicks. So if he's extremely low owned, I'm willing to take a shot, but I don't love it at 9,300. And then Sabonis, similar situation, just didn't stand out for me as much today as guys like Luka and Jokic. So hard for me to prioritize Sabonis at this point. Sabonis is showing up around 15% naturally for me, so that's fine. But again, I didn't force exposure to Luka yet, but I will once we get ownership. I just don't know where to match the field on him yet. And so Sabonis is showing up by himself. I'm okay with that. I'm just not going to force exposure to him. The sim model loves the Knicks today. Personally, I don't love attacking the Kings. They're not the best defense in the NBA or anything like that. They're just typically not a team that gives up a ton of fantasy points. And but with that being said, the sim model still likes them, which I know, and I'm completely aware that I don't know everything, and so I tend to at least still trust the sim model. Doesn't mean I need to make these guys leverage plays, but it means I do want to at least be around field weight, maybe slightly over the field on them. Like I mentioned, Josh Hart's questionable, so that will impact a lot for the Knicks. We could get some decent value on this slate if Josh Hart misses this game, but we just have to wait and see what happens there. For now, assuming he plays, Josh Hart is someone that I want to make sure I'm at least matching field weight exposure on. Dante DiVincenzo, someone I want to make sure I'm at least matching field weight exposure on. And the exact same situation with Miles McBride. Like I said, I don't love the matchup, but we can pull up the sim model on these guys. 7,300. Oh, let's go a little bit lower. All right. Look at Josh Hart. We see 3.2% in the 8X column. There's some guys who beat him, and there are other guys I like, but 3.2% is a pretty solid number. Then we see DiVincenzo. Sim model loves DiVincenzo. I love him if Hart gets ruled out, but for now, he's just okay. And then there was another McBride. Yeah, McBride at 5,900, 8.6% in the 8X column. There's one other player, Gafford, who's a little bit higher than him than that, but not a lot of comparable scenarios. So because of the sim model is why I'm playing these guys, and I'm just going to match the field on them. Low game total, too, is also part of why I'm not overly excited about that game. The Sixers are just going to be a pain in our ass today, aren't they? Yeah, he really is. The Knicks coach is really trying to just run all their players into the ground. He does this. This isn't new for him, but we're seeing it firsthand this season with all these guys just going down. Like, it's insane. Hartenstein is sneaky in GPP, nothing special. Yeah, I don't think he's bad, especially if Robinson misses. Yeah, Kings have been disappointing. Yeah, you're right. I didn't mention Trey Lyles, but he is showing up as a core play for me right now, or one of the guys I have the most exposure to. I don't tend to focus too much on the value plays, 3,600. He's showing up because he is a viable value play. But that's about it. Like you said, too special. Yeah, I don't love Ellis ever. Thomas said, "What's up? Stopping by to say hi. I appreciate the stop in, Thomas. And yeah, if you can make the pre-lock show, that's awesome. If you can't, though, it happens. No worries. No worries." All right. For the Knicks, we talked about them. The Sixers are a team with a lot of injury news. All of the players who are questionable right now for the Sixers were at shoot around today. So that makes us, or should make us, feel a little bit better that they'll play tonight. But we'll see. Joel Embiid is questionable. Maxi's questionable. Tobias Harris is questionable. And Mo Bamba's questionable. All four of those players matter. Mo Bamba really only matters if Joel Embiid was to miss this game. But like I said, Embiid, Maxey, Harris were all at shoot-arounds. So more likely than not, they should all play. I'm only looking at the Sixers tonight if one of the three main stars end up missing this game. For Joel Embiid, I'm still not going to touch him. I know he played 29 minutes in that last game. He dominated from a usage rate standpoint. Before Embiid was at shoot around, I convinced myself Embiid might try to miss this game going up against Bam, still recovering from his injury. This is a tough matchup. I don't like to pick on the Heat, especially with bigs. Joel Embiid is matchup proof, but because he's still coming back from an injury and because we're not getting a discount on him, unless Maxey or Harris end up getting ruled out, I'm not forcing exposure to Joel Embiid tonight. There will be spots. I'm really, really just crossing my fingers and toes and everything. I'm hoping that Embiid just kind of is a little off his game for the next few games up until the playoffs. And then when the playoffs start, hopefully Joel Embiid is super low owned because everyone's talking about his injury. And then that's when we attack. We'll see if it actually works that way. I'm going to keep a close eye out on him and just kind of see how they're utilizing him. But I really like that narrative. But we'll see. Outside of that, though, I'm not playing the Sixers tonight. Next year? You mean playoffs? I know you mean the playoffs. You mean the playoffs. Yeah, I'm not planning on touching him anytime soon. For the Miami Heat, I saw something come through. It looks like Jimmy Butler missed shoot around, but he's still expected to play. So something to keep an eye out for. Assuming he plays, though, there's not too much I'm excited about. Bam Adebayo, I do like at 8,500. Price tag is nice on him. We've seen him way more expensive than this before. Matchup against Joel Embiid is never ideal, but we also don't really know how much Joel is going to play tonight, especially if he's still a little banged up. And so I'm willing to take a shot on what I'm hoping and assuming will be a relatively low-owned Bam Adebayo. If Bam is seeing 15% ownership or more, I'm not looking to touch him tonight. But if he's relatively low-owned, I think he's a solid dart throw at 8,500. Outside of that, no one else really stood out for me. Jimmy Butler has some history with the Sixers. He tends to do better in more competitive game environments. Again, depending on ownership, I could be talked into a small percentage of Jimmy tonight, but again, one of the lower game totals on the slate, not a game I'm trying to force too much exposure to. Butler wants to play this game. Famous quote from Jimmy: Tobias Harris over me. I know. That's the only reason I'm thinking about Jimmy Butler, is just because they have that history and that drama, but I don't know. I'm still feeling it out. It's a low game total. I just really don't want to force exposure to it, but the narrative is giving me the itch. Give me the itch to pull the trigger on it, but I'm trying to keep my head. All right, for the Golden State Warriors tonight, Jonathan Kuminga's questionable. That's a big deal-ish, just in the sense that if he misses this game, guys like Tracy Jackson just become much more viable DFS plays. If Kuminga plays, it's a pretty solid spot to not feel like I have to force exposure to Kuminga or Tracy Jackson Davis. So as of right now, I'm not getting too many Warriors showing up in my lineups. Curry is someone I'm going to make a priority on this slate. Ideally, again, we'll have to see where ownership falls. I would love to make him a leverage play tonight. I just like the pace. I like the pace the Rockets have been playing at here lately. And I think it just sets up for a good performance from Stephen Curry. He hasn't been great lately. That's been obvious. That's been well documented. But I still like the spot at ideally low ownership. And then outside of that, I'm not really looking at the rest of the Warriors unless Kuminga ends up getting ruled out. And then that's a whole nother can of worms. You guys know I don't love playing the Warriors. They're very similar to teams like the Nets or other teams that just have a lot of bodies who see a lot of minutes but rarely have upside besides every now and again. So I just don't love seeing the Warriors on any slate. But Curry's really the only guy I'm going to force exposure to. You did. Are you going to call the drama again today against the Rockets? Who can he start drama with on the Rockets besides the obvious Dylan Brooks? All right. For the Rockets tonight, we have, let's see, no real injury news to talk about. Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet, highest total game on the slate. I'm going to force exposure to them. The Warriors have been pretty neutral from a defensive standpoint all season. They've only gotten better as the season gets closer to the playoffs because they're trying harder now. But with that being said, this is the highest game total on the slate. I think it's going to be one of the most competitive game environments on the slate. I want exposure to Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet. That is just no questions asked, something I need. We are desperate for value on this slate, and so because of that, players like Cam Whitmore are going to show up a bit more often. Cam Whitmore, as of right now, is showing up a lot for me, but he falls into that category of he's a value play. I'm not going to take it too seriously yet. He will not be a core play for me tonight. Cam Whitmore is someone that just makes sense because he sees minutes, but He is not a very consistent player, and nor is he someone who shows a lot of upside typically. So he's had his moments this season. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying he's inconsistent. And so Cam Whitmore, I refuse to have as a core play. It just is what it is. Yeah, I can see Brooks and Draymond getting into it. That wouldn't shock me. Brooks is another guy who's showing up a good amount today. Just naturally, he projects well just because he plays so many minutes and he's relatively cheap at 4,200 and he plays a crap ton. He's another guy that I refuse to have as a core play. Very inconsistent. Matchup against pretty neutral. And kind of like you're saying, win the millie. The odds of him getting into trouble is always possible. Amon. Okay, you like Amon Thompson? I didn't get to Amon, at least not yet. I might need to look at him a little bit closer. He's not projecting well, and he didn't stand out to me for me too much in like sim model and other things I look at. But I'll look a little bit closer at Thomas or Amon. You might be right with Thompson. He could be onto something. Price tag's not bad. Maybe I can go ahead and look at it now. We have a little bit of time. No. I'll look later. But yeah, I don't think that's bad. Again, when we deal with the highest game total on a slate, I rarely am trying to run away from these players. I'm trying to find reasons to play these guys because they're in good game environments. So whereas some of the other games, I'm like, might not love that play. For this game, I'm looking for reasons to play people. So Amon, definitely viable. Jabari, a little bit less excited about him. Dylan Brooks and Cam Whitmore will probably ideally just be around field weight, not much more. Last game on the slate, we have the Nuggets going up against the Clippers. For the Nuggets, Jamal Murray is questionable. He's been questionable for a while. That's not new information. Clippers have Kawhi Leonard out, which is huge for them and keeps this game a little bit more interesting. Jokic is one of my favorite pay-up options on the slate. Clippers have absolutely no one that can handle him, first of all. Second of all, he's had strong performances against them this season. We've seen pretty consistent 60-point upside from him, but we do need a little bit more than that. Would love to see a 70, 80-point performance. I don't know if he's going to give us that ceiling performance, but I feel pretty safe with his floor in this matchup and this price. Obviously, Jokic is a much better play if Murray gets ruled out, but we'll have to wait and see on that. So I'm going to make sure. I think Jokic should ideally be relatively low owned. He's a potential leverage play for me today. If Murray gets ruled out, he's a top priority for me. And then Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon are two guys I'll get some exposure to. I don't really feel like I need Jackson tonight. That could change, though. We'll see what projections do. And then for the Clippers, we talked about it. Kawhi is out. It's weird because no one really pops too much just from like a projection standpoint with Kawhi Leonard being ruled out. But we know Russell Westbrook is slightly more involved. Again, we're desperate for value. He's 4,800. That's why he's showing up so much. Not someone I trust, but he's just a bit of a necessity on this slate. I'm going to limit my risk as much as I can. I think he will be relatively popular tonight, but we'll see. I want a little bit of leverage, but I don't want him to be capable of ruining my night. So that's going to be a bit of a balancing act, but we'll see where we land. When Kawhi is out, I like picking one of George and or Harden to go a little bit heavier on. I would like to have exposure to both of them tonight, but ultimately I chose Paul George as the guy that I'm going to focus on. Depending on his ownership, he could be a potential leverage play for me tonight. These guys are just a little bit too cheap when they take on a bit more of the offensive workload, and so I just want exposure to both of these guys when Kawhi is out. The matchup against the Nuggets is not a good one. That's part of why I'm a little bit more nervous about going too heavy on both of them. But I do like making sure that both of them are showing up in my lines, with PG being my favorite of the two. And then Powell starts here with Kawhi out. Man will also or should also start tonight with Kawhi out. Viable plays given their price tags, but nothing special. They're not, hey, you have to have these guys in your lineups tonight. They just help make things work, and they're logical options on the slate. So far, they're not showing up for me. I think that will change as we get closer to lock, but I don't feel the need to force exposure to them at this point. And this matchup is also part of it. All right. Is the ownership there? Dang it. I hate that. I hate that. Yeah, it is just you. It's the end of the season, man. No one cares. Very few people care about NBA DFS as we get closer to the end of the season. So I don't really take it personally. It is what it is. But I appreciate you sticking around with me, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, yeah, you kind of have to have plays like Terrence Mann and some of the other guys to fit Luca in. And yep, that's why I have as much Lyles right now too, is to fit in guys like Jokic and Doncic and guys like that. Yep, I agree. He makes sense, but it hurts. Rough. Appreciate you. I'm glad you're here too. I know there's a few people. There's a few people who are loyal, been here since the beginning. But I also have no ill will or judgment to those who hop off. I get it. We'll be back for the first round of the playoffs. That's when things are going to get really fun again. But for now, he's got to ride the crazy, crazy wave. Appreciate you, Ricky. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all next time. Be safe. Peace out. See y'all.